When you look across most of the leagues, the major regions within League of Legends, there's usually only a couple of teams that stand out at the top, while there's like a couple teams in the middle tier, and then you got one or two teams in the bottom of the pack. The only region where this really doesn't hold true, at least as far as like the big major regions, we'll say the four major ones. You can make a case for Taiwan being like the fifth major region. I just don't keep up with it, and unfortunately, not a lot of people do. So there's not a whole lot of discussion surrounding Taiwan, though it certainly deserves to be in the conversation for how its best teams look on the global scale after its performance at Worlds. So Korea is the exception out of North America, Europe, and China when it comes to having like this massive parity in terms of like who's the best teams or what like how the division or how the league rather is tiered between the teams and their skill levels appropriately. So let's start with the other regions kind of first. We'll hit China first. This is a region I don't keep up with, unfortunately, so I can't speak up too much on this. But at the start of the season, you had two standout teams. You had Royal Never Give Up and you had Gu. They were dominating both of their groups. They were doing the most things to win. Ever since IEM came around, it sounds like Gu is on a bit of a slump. They're trying to change their identity and it's not working for them. Whereas I've heard stories, or I've heard that LGD has been going on like some winning streaks recently, and so it seems like there is a bit of a shakeup within China. But historically, even in China, you usually have like one or two teams, maybe three, within the top of the standings. In 2015, that was EDG and LGD up until Worlds 2015, when China underperformed rather disgustingly so, and then the whole region itself just has kind of gone to crap, as it were, in terms of international potential and global power ranking, I'll say. In North America, there's always been like one or two top teams within the region. In 2013, it was Cloud9, and in summer that is. But before, you had a bit of more parity between like Team Solo Mid, I think Curse, for fourth Curse, I think Dig was up there at one point, like early on in spring. So there was always a little bit more of shifting in terms of that. But like throughout the years, it's always usually been Team Solo Mid and Cloud9 that have been sort of the standout teams. This being the old TSM roster that had Dyrus on it, Bjergsen, Wild Turtle, and then the classic Cloud9 roster. And even after that classic roster, changed, they moved high into the jungle, Meteos left, they brought in Jensen for mid lane. Cloud9 kind of was able to recapture some of that old potential after the summer season was over. And if you look within North America now, you have Immortals on top, undisputedly the best team in North America. They have a system that no one else can seem to beat, playing around Huni and Reignover, taking over the map. Pullbelly just plays it pretty safe, playing these reliable wave-clearing champions to give Immortals that extra boost. And then you have Turtle being, they're enabling Turtle to be as aggressive as he wants to be through having supportive staff, usually in the mid and the support lane, with shields or heals for him, so then he can go in, he can do these crazy, insane, close range, bad decisions or whatever that, would be punished by better teams, but North America isn't simply good enough to punish that. Run underneath Immortals, and you have sort of CLG in second place, and probably Cloud9. I want to almost say that Cloud9's a better team, but Balls is still a bit of a liability to me, whereas CLG doesn't have a liability per se. They just have a one-dimensional style that they can only play within that style. So it's strategically limited, but the power of their players is still very good. But there's like probably like you're probably arguably three like top teams, with Immortals being just ahead of CLG and Cloud9, and then beneath them you have Team Liquid, NRG, Team Solo Mid. Maybe Echo Fox. I think it's probably safe to put Echo Fox just a a tier below them. Okay, but still, it's a very small concentration. We have probably the best team, probably two teams beneath that, and an S tier, then an A tier, or maybe they're all S. I don't think they're all S tier personally. And you get like B or T teams beneath that. In Europe, it's a similar thing, where you have H2K is probably the best team in Europe. But it's still a really competitive bracket. Throughout the season, it's been really competitive. The three best teams from Europe are, without a doubt, H2K, G2, and Vitality. Now, whether or not there's a system of, in a series, this team can, A beats B, but B beats C, but C also beats A. So, you can have like this, everyone can beat each other depending on the matchup sort of thing. I don't know what even that is. You can have that kind of a situation in Europe, I think, with H2K, Vitality, and G2 holding those spots. I think H2K is still the best team. It has probably the most star power. You know, it's got Forgiven, it's got Odoamne, it's got Yankos and Vander. That's really a lot of good players on the team, and they've pretty much been one of the most strategically sound teams, while also being able to be really aggressive. G2 has been really skirmish heavy, and it's really talented in its microplay, and Perks has come up as one of the big surprise picks of the season, or players of the season, rather. But you know, if the team doesn't get these skirmishes and they don't win, they can, you know, things can fall apart. And they've thrown a couple of leads before. Vitality, on their hand, is almost kind of like the polar opposite. They're not really skirmish heavy. Cowashort gets these huge advantages in the lane. He's been absolutely phenomenal this season. And then the team just overall just seems to out macro the opponent. It has one of the fewest kills in the entire league, despite being a team with a winning record, as well as one of the fewest deaths. It's a very interesting team where it seems like Vitality doesn't really... It plays more around pressure than it does skirmishes, though it certainly can skirmish, I think. So, you know, you kind of have that parity within there. Beneath those get teams. I would say... I'm trying to remember the standings. I think UOL could have been up there if it wasn't for them losing Diamond Procs and having to go through all these different junglers. I think UOL could be probably up in there as like a fourth team competing for like the first place spot, but I think they've lost a lot of power with Diamond Procs having to leave the team. So it's UOL, Fnatic, and Origin, whichever you want to call it, or pronounce it rather. I think those teams kind of like filling like the beer T list slot. Maybe Origin is a C tier list team in and of itself. I think there's some way to debate that. And then you got like teams like Elements. The devil else is in Europe right now. I'm trying to remember all of them. You have like Elements. I feel like it's its own tier. They're kind of like in the middle. Like they can't take games off of the top 5, but they can beat everybody below top 5. Because then you get teams like New Giants and Rocket. Absolutely one of some of the worst teams. You get Splice. It's been looking pretty bad. And there is another one. Or did I list them all? I think I listed them all. So, you know, and there's that parity. So within NA in Europe, you have this different sort of... You have a couple teams at the very top, and then it kind of just gets segmented all the way through. Now, if you go look to Korea, this is completely not the case, both in terms of the standing and probably in terms of performance as well. Not probably, it's definitely in terms of performance. So the thing with Korea is that their playoffs are a little different. I think Taiwan has the same structure where they do a gauntlet structure. So whereas North America and Europe have 6 teams in the playoffs, Korea only has 5 because it will do it seeds each team based on their seeding based on their seed. Seeds based on their seed. Okay, good. It places teams within the playoff bracket based on their seed from the regular season. So if you're in 5th place, you're going to be at the bottom You're going to be part of the wild card. A wild card match, which is the best of 3. At least I think they're keeping that. Then 4th place team is also at the bottom, and they play the 5th place team. Whoever wins that goes on to play the 3rd place team. Whoever wins that plays the 2nd. Whoever wins that plays the 1st. So it's possible for the 5th place team to make a run all the way up to the final, but they have to with each match they have to play a consistently higher seeded opponent in order to make it there. It punishes people for being lower on the bracket by forcing them to play more games, and the games get more difficult, theoretically speaking, as it goes on. Though I suppose within individual matchups, you could technically have like a worst wild card match and then an easier third match with 3rd place, depending on how your team matched up with the 3rd place team, which is something that I think could be possible with further analysis within Korea. So there's only 5 spots, and Roxas has secured the 1st place spot. So they're going to be in the final once again, just like they were in spring. Let's hope we don't. I'm hoping we don't get a case of deja vu there, but that's me speaking as a Tigers fan. Following that, there's 4 spots remaining, and currently there are about 7 teams competing for those 4 spots. 7 out of the 10 teams in the league are competing for the playoff spots. That's pretty insane, and with last night's results, it's really up for grabs to almost anyone. So, and I talked about this in a Slingshot article. I'm not going to go too in-depth of the teams themselves because I've already done that for Slingshot. So if you do want to read that, I'll put a link in the description where you can go read my thoughts on each of the team's chances. This was written before today's games when KT Rolster defeated Rox Tigers and when Longzhu defeated Samsung. So that changes up things quite a bit. It makes it harder for Samsung, but it makes it, okay, maybe Longzhu can make the run in. So who knows? It's rather insane to kind of think of a parity like this, where you legitimately have 8 teams that, depending on their form in that day, because it's one thing about some of these teams that they can look really good some days, and other times they can just look they don't look as good. I think KT is a good example of that. KT has these, they can look phenomenal. They can do these really crazy drafts where it's like the enemy team has drafted three marksmen, 380 carries, and so we're going to last pick Rammus, and now they can't do any damage to us once someday completes his Thornmail. It was a very cool thing to see. But then they've also made mistakes like that. Like, they fell for that very same trick to Jennair, and ironically enough, it was Jennair who they initially brought up the Rammus into the triple AD with. So, I mean, they've fallen for their own tricks sometimes. They've done these, like, weird changes with their compositions as well. So, KT can kind of like do these weird things with their draft, and it's a little awkward. I think Rox did that last night as well, but it's hard to judge Rox right now to me, just because they secured first place. They could legitimately lose the rest of their games, and it would not affect their standing. So they could be just like, yo, let's hide what we're going to really do for playoffs. Let's see what we can get away with and try all these crazy ideas, because there's no pressure anymore. So that's what I think could happen with the KT roster game, and especially in Game 3. So I don't know how to evaluate Rox right now, but I mean they've shown that, hey, they have some really good macro ideas, crap like that. I do think that Rox is the undisputed best team in Korea right now, although there is worry about, like, okay, is it going to be meta dependent like it was last year? Because we've talked about Peanut. He's had a great season on these carry junglers, but his tank jungle performances haven't been so okay. I feel like it's slightly unfair to judge his tank performances though in this context, simply because some of the games where he's been put on Gragas and whatnot, yes, he hasn't had as much impact, but he's also is having the tables turned on him. Like in Rox's initial loss to Samsung, okay, he played Gragas, I think, in Game 2, and then Samsung, they had Ambition on Graves. I think it was Graves. It might have been Kindred. It was one of those two champions, and the duo lane had a pushing edge, so they all invaded Peanut, and, Peanut tried to do a flashy play, and it didn't work out, so he got punished for it. So I do think that Peanut is a little over-aggressive, and he tries too hard to go for these outplays rather than being like, okay, let's just not even, I'm going to lose this thing, let's not give any more. That's the one thing I think about Peanut. This is turning into a horrible tangent. That's the one thing I really think is true about Peanut, but when other junglers can still play carry junglers and can be aggressive towards Peanut, I think it's a little too early to judge whether or not he's going to be good at the tank junglers, because having that pressure put on him, it's going to inhibit his performance a little bit, but, we'll see how it goes. I do know that he played for Naj in a couple games last season. He didn't look so good there, but it's been a lot of time, and he's looking like one of the best junglers in this season, although, again, he's missing out on awards. He's playing catch-up, at least. So that was a long talk on Rox being. I think they're the first place team. I think they're going to win Champions Korea, but then, there's a possibility that someone else could come up and beat them. I don't know who. I don't think. Okay, maybe SKT could. I think SKT could. I think KT Rolster could. They've beaten them in a best of 3 so far. So I think that those are the two teams that have a good shot at beating Rox Tigers. So even there, I can say that about, like, the top team. I can say that there is an undisputed best team in Korea, but there is still teams that can challenge them remotely. It's harder to say that, Cloud9 could definitely take Immortals in a game just because Reignover's having a really good season, even though Rush has been phenomenal. Pobelter doesn't really give a whole lot of openings for Jensen to work with. Turtle has been largely untouched in the bottom lane this entire season. And then you have Balls versus Huni, which is a huge mismatch. And then CLG, it's a similar story. Although I think, Huhi is a little sketchy, Stixay can be a little bit sketchy. Darshan's been okay, but again, it's a one-dimensional style, and Huni can beat Darshan at that style as well. It's harder to kind of make cases for those two teams, beating Immortals within North America, but there is a couple of good cases made for some teams, Korea being the top team. And even those two teams can lose to some of the other teams. We saw SKT lose to Jennair 2-0 at the start of the season. Though, to be fair, they were playing with Bangi, and he's been really out of shape in this meta. And when they brought back in Blank, they were able to 2-0 Jennair. So there you go. KT Rolster and Jennair have traded series. Samsung has been, they took a series off of Rox, rather. They've been close to beating SK Telecom, again, though that was kind of during the slump. So there's so much, like, back and forth, and, even you look down the further list and they go, while it's true that Longju is, like, the 8th place team, they might have gone up a little bit in the standings. I want to say they're 7th now with their win over Samsung, personally. Maybe that's the case. I haven't looked. But, even though they've been looking really wonky, they're still a team that has, like, these incredible highs where it's just like, wow, they're a really good team. This is an elite level team. This is what we were expecting from them. And then, they go on in, and then they're starting to make all the, like, these mistakes that you don't expect from the talent that they have in terms of veterancy. So it's a little weird like that. But still, like, there's so much parity within, like, between all of these teams, and the fact that, like, on any given day, it feels like, they can all beat each other to a degree. I think that there is certainly favorites in the matchups, and it depends on, like, the strategies that they come on in. I think Longju, if I had to put my bets down, I say Longju still has a shot to get into playoffs. I think it's unlikely, though. I think Samsung could maybe pull together. I have to remember what their schedules look like. I think it's possible for Afrika, actually. I think it's more likely that with Samsung losing to Longju like they did, I think Afrika has a good shot of getting into the playoffs, actually. And I mean, they're a team that has been, like, notorious for, like, okay, if Mickey doesn't get his champions, no one really carries for the team. Although Ixer's been stepping up in terms of his tank role, Song and Snowflower, if they get onto their lanes, they win a lot of the 2v2s in the league. Where, and again, this is 7th place teams duos. They're being able to go up against, like, KT Rolster's duo, I think SKT's duo a little bit. I have to remember all the teams. Again, there's so much back and forth within this league. It's really exciting to see that within a region. And what's impressive really about this as well is the fact that Korea had a huge exodus of players last year, or rather, coming up on 2 years. In the 2014-2015 offseason, it had like over 30 professionals leave Korea, and it wasn't just like a bunch of like bottom tier guys. This is some of the best level teams, like both the Samsung teams who were Samsung Blue is dominant locally, and then Samsung White, who was incredibly dominant at Season 4 Worlds. All of those players left, and they went to China. Some other players went to North America. So there was a whole bunch of, like, a lot of top-level talent left within the region, and only within a year after that occurred, it's already been replaced, and once again, there's like this approaching parity level of like this really hyper-competitive region coming back through, which really just attests to both the practice ethic of players, how willingness, the responsiveness to coaching, there we go, in terms of learn the macro play, in terms of diligently practice the game to improve. It's really exciting to see Korea come in like this, and it's being a fan of the LCK myself for quite some time, namely because I'm a fan of the best possible League of Legends, as well as seeing the highest level of competition that someone can take a game to. It's really exciting to see that within Korea, and this playoff race, it's really momentous, and it's great to see Korea back in this form, and it's probably worrying as a Western fan to see Korea have this much parity after, considering all the talent that it's lost a year ago. So it's, I don't see really how a Western region is necessarily going to compete with that personally. I mean, who knows? I mean, it's more than possible for a Korean team to fail. I think that the upper echelon Korean team, the Korean team that's able to dominate all the players, isn't going to be touched by the West, personally. But that's coming up to a broader topic, and that we really don't need to explore in this video. Again, so whereas most of the regions, they usually have like a handful, like 1 to 3 teams at the very top that are like undisputedly the best, if not just one team is the best. Korea has this massive parity between like sort of like the just up at that upper echelon, especially for in terms of qualifying for playoffs. Yeah, I think that you have to place Rocks Tigers as the best team like overall in the league, but everyone else underneath them, they're capable of having good games against Rocks Tigers. They're capable of taking a series off of Rocks Tigers, at least a best of 3. I don't know so much about a best of 5 when Rocks is serious. And then within that structure, most of them can pretty much fight each other all day long, and you can go back and forth in either way, and it's something really exciting to see. And once we go into playoffs, I think that we're going to be in for probably one of the best playoff runs that the world of League of Legends has ever seen this year. So anyways, thank you guys for checking this out. Enjoy your day.